I just received an email from Greg with, oh, it looks like he sent it to everybody. Okay, so I'm not going to worry about that. I haven't looked at it, so if you have a chance while we're talking to look at it, you're welcome to do that. I'm going to call the meeting to order. And I'm going to confirm, first of all, that you've all received the email for tonight because you're all here, so you have the right sign-on information. And if you had a chance to look at the letter, I'm hoping it's the revision. Do you agree that it was? There was a question about whether there's still the question from Janine and Jeff in the letter that I couldn't answer, so I left that there. But people had some wording changes. There was some more specifics in terms of the money, and I included that. Recommendation around, say that again. Somebody say something.
He said, I think Bob's having problems not hearing people.
Oh, okay. Let me turn my volume up.
Oh, yeah, everyone can hear you. He probably doesn't have his volume up on his computer.
Oh, okay.
Or he hasn't eliminated the closing. So he has to go up here and get rid of the mute.
Okay. So everybody okay with what I said in the email, that we work on getting the letter done and Schedule A tonight? Schedule A is going to be a lot. You have the revision, the revised Schedule A with the requested and then recommended in terms of the essential spending and lack of new hiring. I'm hoping you got that.
Yep.
So let me just open it and see if anybody has any questions or anything that we should talk about tonight.
One question I have is Greg sent 2 attachments. Do we know the difference between the 2?
I haven't looked at them, so Greg? You have to unmute, Greg.
I think one was just trying to be with markup and one was not. One, I think maybe both have markup if you show markup, but I was trying to show the markup without having you to click show markup.
So,
Okay, thank you.
so they're the same.
They're the same. They're the same.
Okay. I really appreciate people reading and emailing me their recommendations for changes, and I think I've taken everything that people recommended into consideration. What about the 2 questions that are outstanding, Greg? Did you answer those in the letter? The question that Jeff had about capital spending and the question that Janine had about the new buildings?
Well, I took the new building stuff. There was some reference to it causing a financial impact. That's what I saw. It doesn't really cause significant financial impact, so I took that out. It's not a budget factor for next year.
Okay.
And I just kind of left Jeff's comment in there. I kind of worked around it, kind of wordsmithing some of what you had said, and just made sure it kind of reflected more of there were a few things that were said that weren't fully accurate, so I tried to correct for that.
So my question was whether the suggestion of a capital reserve at the level of the prior average of the prior 5-year capital spending, whether that was workable. I didn't understand how we could fund a reserve at that level.
So I'm going to table that because that's a bigger question than what Jeff asked. But Janine, did you have a question on the letter?
Yes, on my original question, I guess I just need some clarification, Greg, because you're saying it doesn't have an impact on the budget. And the only reason I put it in there is that's a comment, question, concern that town people say all the time. Look at all the money we spent on this. So
let me clarify. Where that was in the version I saw was over with increases in the operating budget. At least that's where it was
capital money, that I guess. I was just trying to understand if it was included somehow.
I may have misinterpreted it because again, it was over, it said increases include the following. And one of them was for that. And it's not a major increase in the operating budget. That's why I took it out.
Right, that's,
So how would you answer Janine's question then? So if somebody in town meeting says, look at all the money we're spending, where is that covered in the budget? Because I think that's it. That is, how conversations get started, and it could.
Well, I guess what I would say is that the majority of that money was already spent through capital. It's
How about operation and maintenance, though?
Operation and maintenance. We did not increase our budgets to reflect. We level funded the budgets and did not add anything additional for those items. So obviously, what will end up happening is to the degree there is any additional expenditures, they will be absorbed in whatever excess is within those budgets. There were no supplements made to those budgets to factor in these
But
bills.
they won't be needed either, is what you're saying. Those supplements won't be needed.
I do not believe so. One thing to keep in mind is both those buildings are still under warranties and such. So
Yep.
a lot of the expenditures, if there's a problem, they don't get covered by the town. Now, mind you, there are additional expenses related to cleaning. There are additional expenses related to electricity, particularly the police budget. It's not in the police budget, but there was enough excess in the facilities management budget to handle that without actually increasing those budgets.
So that's helpful information, Janine, do you think? If somebody asks that question, we know what to say? We know how to respond?
yes.
So I didn't list it as a source of increase in the budget because we didn't increase the budget to reflect that.
I just want to say on the capital, the plan right now is that we have a capital improvement plan for 5 years. It's usually funded in the spring and in the fall. In this letter, we discussed doing that in a different way. So we have to decide tonight if we think that is a good idea. I'm going to tell you that I think it's probably a good idea for us to do what we've done before. And then when we're talking about planning this summer, make any changes then, because I think that's a pretty big undertaking and there's enough, we don't really know what it's going to cost.
I kind
Looks
of
like you've taken that out, though.
I think just saying going forward, just say
Yeah.
it in the future.
You took out the 5-year reserve every year funded at a 5-year average level. You took that out.
Yeah, but your
So
question.
my comments.
I left that.
Wait a minute. My comment's no longer relevant.
Yeah. I understand what you're saying, and we will get to a conclusion on this, but
I'm just saying you can take out my comment. It's no longer relevant.
okay. Greg,
Well,
you
hold
said,
on, I'm sorry, it's still in there.
Yeah, it's
In
still
red.
in. I don't know why it's still in there, but
Yeah.
I'm saying.
What I did is I kind of wordsmithed a little and I put in the words explore the possibilities. So I didn't say you were going to change things. I said you were going to look at the concept of budgeting for capital. And by the way, it's not at the end of the year, it's at the beginning of the year. That's one thing to keep in mind. So I indicated you would explore the possibility at looking at budgeting a set amount for capital at the beginning of the year, as opposed to relying upon the level of reserves as it goes up and down from year to year. And part of that, looking at 5 years, I thought that's one method by which to come up with that number. If that's something the committee wishes to further explore, and we have talked about that.
Yeah.
So it's exploring the possibility. It's not making, there's still a lot of discussions that need to occur, obviously, before we make such a change.
so I'm going to take the red, in my copy it's red, I'm going to take that out of the letter. Would you like to go through the letter and see Beppy? Yeah,
Well, I'm reading Greg's letter, and I'm reading the one that, I think Greg's letter has made some valuable improvements. So if we're
Okay.
going to review one of the two letters, my personal opinion is we should take Greg's, because some of their corrections, some of the edits he's already talked about, and otherwise, and he's wordsmithed a little bit about that capital. So everybody was just sent it 10 minutes ago.
No, I
And so
realize. I
I would-
apologize.
Yeah,
Do you feel-
I'm glad we got it, because I think
can
this is
people
really
do
bad.
that? Do you feel like you have it and you can redo that? I'm gonna print it right now so that I can read it.
I didn't get Greg's letter.
You just sent
I
Check
did.
your email.
I'm looking at my email. I didn't get it.
Come in about 15 minutes ago. 6:24.
From Greg?
Yeah.
Yeah.
from Greg.
Yep, from Greg.
I didn't get it.
Jeff,
well,
you're on there.
You're on there unless
And it came 15 minutes ago?
Yeah.
24.
I'm on email. I didn't get it.
I got mine at 6:25.
Kelly,
Let
your
me see if
computer's
it's
slower.
someplace.
Well, I can try to send it again. I don't know.
Well, we can't take it now.
Just send it to Jeff.
Wait a minute. Hold on.
Here, I just sent it again, Jeff.
You could share your screen too.
Yeah, that's what I was planning on doing.
Yeah.
I was planning on it on my screen, and
It might be
Okay, I got it.
helpful if Greg, if you share it and then we just go through it together, or you make your comments.
that's what I'm going to do.
I got it. Thank you.
Okay, very good. So
Whoa.
you can do that, Greg? You think you can share it?
Yeah, I'm working on that right now. I'm just putting it over here.
So while he's pulling it up, let me just remind you, we're not meeting on Tuesday. We don't have, they don't have an opening. They have an opening another day if we need it, but it seems to me that we might be able to finish our work with our Thursday meeting and then the 12th. What are your thoughts about that?
Okay with that.
We can wait till the end of today and decide again.
All right, very good. All right. And then a couple of things that I didn't put in the email, but we probably want to discuss before the town meeting. One is, for those of you who were at the town meeting, I think it was last spring, we had a motion from the floor to access the reserve fund for positions that were not recommended by the finance committee. And the way that it was done, apparently it was okay. It took us, some of us remember this, it took me by surprise. I checked with Melissa and asked, is this legal? And it certainly was. They did it the way they should. The concern that I have is, what if that happens again? Or what if somebody else who has asked for something that we're not recommending, because when we go through Schedule A, you'll see a couple of those things. What if that happens? Well, I don't believe there's anything we can do. I'm wondering if we should put someplace or make a statement that day about the importance of adhering to the recommendations that have been made. So think about that piece. I think it would be helpful to be prepared for that. And then in the letter, I wondered if we should put something in about revenues, that this is based on anticipated revenues of, et cetera, a certain amount. What do you think about those two questions? Any thoughts?
Well, I know that last year we had someone ask us right off the bat, can someone tell us what the free cash amount is? So I think we need to at least have that in the letter somewhere.
Okay.
And then I think it's a good idea to have a prepared statement to just reiterate the importance of why the budget is the way it is. So if someone does come forward because they're not happy with what they've received, we should have some kind of prepared statement to just remind town meeting as to the crisis we're in right now.
Yeah, it's a glorious point, and yours, Terry. I think it's helpful, I think, for the town meeting representatives to know the amount of work you put into the budget and reviewing and meeting with all the departments and reviewing in detail their budgets. I don't think that was really said last year, and I think it's helpful to stress that you as a finance committee put a lot of effort into this budget, and to make wholesale or just any type of change on the floor of town meeting isn't really prudent.
Okay. Other thoughts?
I do think the revenues are at least discussed in this, and I do think the most vulnerable areas, it seems to me, and maybe Greg wouldn't comment, but it really is the local receipts. I mean, this summer could be a Well, actually, Greg, one of the interesting things is of the local receipts, how much is just things that are very variable, like summer activities and hotels and things like that? Some are probably pretty standard, like excise taxes, but I'm really wondering how vulnerable we are to certain parts of the local receipts.
Off the top of my head, about roughly 1.4 million is meals and hotel taxes.
Okay.
The motor vehicle over the summer isn't going to be a major impact
Okay.
because they have those are committed monies. We bill specific amounts.
Yeah.
And the major bill does not go out until next January, late January, early February.
Okay,
So
thank you.
we're not even going to see that until almost, 10 months from now. Where are we? Oh God, we're at, April. We're not even going to see that for 8 months from now.
But I just think saying we know it's the revenue is more vulnerable, particularly in the local receipts. I think it's
the most vulnerable area for fiscal 21 in particular, I believe, is local receipts. State aid, there tends to often be a delay between down periods and when a state starts to cut. So I can't say for sure what they'll be doing next year, but my guess is the first thing they'll be doing is tapping into the reserves. And if a down period continues, they won't have that luxury for 22. So 21, I think, is going to be muted somewhat by the fact that the state does have reserves that they can tap into. 22 would be far more severe, again, if there was a prolonged downturn, because those reserves would be significantly depleted should they have to tap into them for 21.
Okay, but I think that the language in the letter, I think, does an okay job on that currently.
Yeah. Other people, other thoughts?
We're talking about the letter?
Yeah,
Let's
do you
go back
see what I tried to put it online? Do you see it?
Yeah, I see it.
Oh, okay.
I mean, I have some comments on the letter, but I'll wait till we
Okay.
get there. Yeah.
Yeah, we're on the letter, so go for it.
I don't know if you changed this, but I didn't like it said our endorsement is conditional and
Yep, I
subject.
changed that, Bob. I took
Okay.
both things that you said about the language around the financial crisis, and I also,
Yeah.
Bob's point was that we should be saying, we should vote the budget, and we should say that it's based on the facts that we have today, rather than saying conditional, because he's right, we're gonna send this to the town meeting and they're gonna vote on it.
We should
So I
go
did-
paragraph by paragraph, Terry?
Yeah,
can
let's
we
do that.
Again, please?
do that?
Yeah, let's start from the top.
Okay.
And that language is still in there on my suggested.
Want to go to the top?
Okay.
Yes.
Somebody read.
Do you want? Oh.
Can you put it in the final version, Greg?
Yeah,
so
I
we
can
aren't
do
look-
that. I can.
Why don't we do
Yeah,
that?
no, that's fine.
And just in terms of the first paragraph, I just have a question. It says with additional amounts for contract ratifications.
Yes. There's
That begs the question.
one second. Let me put it in. Okay, so
There you go.
Yeah.
so what
Oops,
happened
that,
there?
no, that's not it. That's
Oh,
the old
that's
one.
original. That's original.
Yep, that's not
Okay.
it.
Sorry. All right. So there's a separate article. I believe is it
16,
17?
17.
That includes those numbers. Now, right now, there are a few numbers we're still in the process of refining, not the police or not the steel workers, but the laborers, and there's some uncertainty on the DTA. So I didn't put a specific number in, given that. And
Yeah,
also, it's
can't-
quite possible that the DTA will come as an amendment because nothing's been, there has been no preliminary settlement in that regard. And Sean can talk more about that, but I can't include something in that hasn't been
I understand that, Greg, but we also can't write with additional amounts. We have to say how much money it is or leave that out and understand that that money is still in the budget someplace
Well, I
else.
guess what I can do, I could say instead of, I could add those in, you know, and then say including amounts for contract ratifications in parentheses, because it won't be all in Schedule A. You'll see it in Schedule A. And
I mean, what are other people's thoughts about that?
Are you also saying that some of them are already in there, like the police is in there, but some have already been ratified and therefore are included in the Schedule A, but some aren't?
The Schedule A, as you see, does not include any collective bargaining contracts, because in order for them to be included, they have to be ratified. In order to be ratified, Article 17 has to be approved. So we have not. So if you voted the operating budget without ratification, then you know, we'd have to take out all those numbers if, say, town meeting said we don't want to include ratification. So you have to add Schedule A to that other article to get the overall operating budget.
That makes sense. And I also think, I agree. I think the number should be included there. How about, I see that for Article 17. How about Article 16?
Article 16, I believe that's just changing rates. That does not actually change the budget. So that's already been factored in.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's been factored in. So in any case, what I could do is I will use the estimated number for the DTA and then just put the whole number together. And I don't even need to put it in parentheses because I'm just saying the operating budget. On the summary page of the operating budget that's given a town meeting, it will be made clear that it's not just Schedule A, but the collective bargaining items as well.
Thank you.
So
One other thing, Greg, you also we are approving a certain amount of money from the tax levy next year for capital expenditures. Is that additive to this 91.6 million as well? So once it gets ratified?
Well, no, because that's not considered to be part of the operating budget. That's actually considered to be the capital. Even though the monies are coming from the tax levy, we voted as capital, not as operating.
Okay, thank you.
I think that we have to be very, very careful with this cover letter. You can't have it raise more questions than it answers. The purpose of this letter was kind of to give a explanation or a summary of the work we've done and very overview. If you get into too many details, you're going to spend the entire town meeting with people questioning what's in the letter, and that's not what you want. So I think we're heading in that direction, and we ought to think hard about that.
When town meeting looks at Schedule A, they look at that as the operating budget, do they not?
I would think.
Yes.
Right? Which is the 91 million.
Yes.
So I would leave it at the 91 million.
What I could do is just say the general fund operating budget of the operating budget parentheses Schedule A of 91.6.
Yes.
Yeah, and just make it clear it's Schedule A.
Yes.
Leave out the contract ratification.
Yeah, I will get rid of that.
Yeah, that's better.
I mean, I'm not even sure you need to make the statement you're making in this first paragraph, because the whole purpose of going through the articles in the warrant is to show what we've recommended and what we're not recommending. And it's clear we're recommending the budget when we get to that article. So you don't really want to do a lot of repeating of what's already in the schedule, you know, what we're handing out in the warrant. You don't want to repeat that in this letter.
I think it simplifies it for people and makes it clear as a good opening statement.
Yeah.
Well, I hope you're gonna make, as you go through each article and there's a statement made by the select board and by the moderator and what have you, I mean, it's gonna be clear what we're recommending, I would think. I mean, that's fine. If you want to be redundant, that's okay. But you can't have people comparing what's in the warrant to what's in our letter and then raising questions that you're going to be trying to deal with throughout the morning.
So take out that parens.
Take out what?
The with additional amounts for contract ratification.
I took it, if you
Yeah,
look, I
that's
just
good.
changed it.
Good.
I mean, as a town meeting member, before I was involved with the finance committee, when I look at the operating budget, I just look for differences. I mean, that's really kind of what I look for. So, and I think in our explanations, we do explain that. So.
Good.
Anything else?
No, that's
Yeah,
a good opening.
Well,
Okay,
I would have something heading into the, so if you look at the first, I put this in the notes, but if you look at the first paragraph, it just says that, here's our general fund, here's our enterprise fund. The next paragraph starts with, the increases are primarily, that doesn't make sense. What increases?
Yeah.
So that sentence that starts the general fund budget, excluding the blah, 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 is 2.8 cents above from next paragraph.
Yeah,
That should go
move it
at
up.
the end of the first paragraph or at the beginning of the increases sentence, because it's just a non sequitur.
Yeah, I agree.
Right. The third paragraph where we talk about the percentage increase should come next.
You're right.
Or at least that sentence.
No, switch that paragraph. That's a good idea.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Mm-hmm.
segue.
Want me to move this to this
Yes.
there? Or a new paragraph?
Yeah.
They really don't, you could do it in one paragraph. It's really not separate paragraphs, but it's up to you.
Okay, now one thing, I don't mean to complicate things a little here, but there was one major reason, now that I'm looking at this, why I put in the not including the contract settlements, because you cited Schedule A, but then you said the increases are primarily due to the increase in the current settled contracts, which are not included in the Schedule A. So that's why they're included in Article 17.
So why don't we just focus on what is the increase of 2.8%?
Well, that would be, the increases are primarily due to non-discretionary costs, pension, regional school assessments, and veterans benefits. That is what caused it in the Schedule A itself. I could change it that way if you want. Or we can also put another sentence saying, in Article 17, we could make reference to Article 17, including additional amounts for collective bargaining, and make that just a reference after we noted all this.
Could you say something like the budget is generally level funded with the exception of increases for items 1 and 2?
That's a good.
Not one.
Right. So you could, and you've talked about excluding the contracts and the section above. So yeah, maybe you just say, the budget is generally level funded with the exception of, increases for non-discretionary costs, i.e. pension, regional school assessments, and veterans.
I would take the whole thing out, frankly. It's too detailed. We want to stay with the bigger picture in this thing, I think. I think it's a mistake to get into something as detailed as that. Leave it for the Schedule A, leave it for any discussion that comes up when you vote the article.
Well, I
And
kind
here,
of just
stick with,
have to disagree.
capital spend, big picture stuff here.
Well, I think putting number 2, the significant increase is non-discretionary, that's not specific. I mean, that's not giving too many details. It's very general. It's pension, regional schools.
No, because it's only a 1%, we're talking about a 1% increase.
No, a
2% increase.
2.8. 2.8.
2.8% increase, yeah.
No, but people need to know where that.
That's more than.
Okay, that's
more than
fine. Just making a suggestion.
Another question with that, if it is a 2.8, the 89 million from the previous year, whatever that one was, Greg and others, since I'm, does that include the pension, the contract decisions? When we talk about when we're doing year to year, 89, fiscal year 20 to 21, and we talk about the change of 2.8%, is the number that we're using for fiscal year 20 the one that was approved at town meeting, or was it the one that was final after you included the contract negotiations, et cetera?
They do an actuarial update. And so any kind of contract increase as voted at this town meeting is not reflected in the pension number. It'd be reflected in future years of the pension number. So
no, I don't think that's what I meant. We last year at this time, they approved an $89 million Schedule A budget.
Yes.
They approved that. Then at some point in time, you also approved whatever you ratified various union compensation negotiations. And therefore that had to get added to the base budget. Yes.
Okay. So last year, if you go to Article 17, you'll see it makes reference to both 2020 and 21.
Yeah.
So last year there were none of the unions settled last year. So we didn't even have this article. The Article 17 last year. What we did do is we put money into a stabilization fund for collective bargaining. But
thank you. One more question then. So the 2.8 is real, and just so we know, once we get the final negotiations, is that 2.8 going to jump to 3.2 or something when we actually do have the final? I'm just curious. It
will definitely be higher than the 2.8. It would probably be more than 3.2.
So Greg, our letter and our warrant is due on May 13th. Are you going to have all those numbers by then?
As long as I can put in estimates, then we're fine.
I'm asking if it's done, it's done, then let's put it in. If it's not done and it's not done, then we're not going to include it. That's my question.
So if it's done, again, I think, and Sean can speak on this, the laborers, they're ratified, Sean?
No, Monday's meeting, the laborers and the steelworkers contracts are going to be before the board to ratify. And
but has the laborers themselves approved it?
Yeah, laborers and steelworkers have both reviewed the memorandums of understanding and approved them, voted on them. So the select board is going to review them Monday. And DEA, I've been in contact with them. We're trying to meet early next week, which is some sort of settlement.
Yeah. So we were able to put the laborers in. We can put the steel. Well, this, of course, we assume the select board's going to endorse, but the steel workers, the laborers, the police union, all are givens. The uncertainty right now is the DTA union.
So my suggestion is that if we don't know, and if this is an evolving number, we need to take it out. And I know people want to be specific, but I don't think that it makes sense for us to write a letter that says 2.8, and on June 2nd, it's 3.2. That makes no sense to me. What do other people think about that?
Right.
Why don't we just talk about the increases and leave the numbers out? Increases
Right.
over FY 2020 are from these reasons. We don't need to put the exact percentages.
Right. We started talking like that, but then people thought there was a need to be specific, which I get.
No, I agree, but we don't have the numbers.
Nope.
If we have them, we can put the numbers in. If we don't have them, we leave it, we word it differently.
Because the point that we're making is we know there are increases and we know why. And that comes to my concern about the statement around currently settled contracts is we know before the pandemic, we were worried about the contracts and about the reclassification study, were we not? We were talking about that almost every time we met. So I think that we do have to somehow give credit to those issues which significantly increased the budget, unless that's not true. And if it's not, then we can take it out. But
Could I make at 1 second, I'm trying to get the actual article number, but I have a possible suggestion. 1 second here. Could you say something like the Finance Committee endorses the Town of Dartmouth's fiscal year 2021 general fund operating budget as presented for Article 8 and Article 17, as presented in Article 8 and Article 17. So you're referring to the articles which actually will have the numbers.
what do you
And
think?
again, in Article 8, you'll have a handout which will have a breakout of all those numbers.
That's a good idea.
Okay.
I agree.
All right, let's do that then.
So I'm going to get rid of Schedule A, and I'll just say as presented in, and that way if it changes, then, and article.
And 17 will be done by then.
Hopefully.
Oh, we don't like to do it, but sometimes you have to have amendments on the town meeting floor. That's not unprecedented.
Okay,
So,
thank you.
Have we settled on a different date for the town meeting since a lot of, June 2nd?
Yes, no, not yet. Originally, I think I mentioned at the last meeting, we had a meeting with the moderator, the clerk, town council a few weeks ago. And originally the governor's order was to extend to May 4th. He's since extended that, but as a result, we didn't make any decisions at our last meeting, and we decided that we would meet again on May 4th to see what the governor was going to do. So now it's been extended. We still have some options. I think I explained those a little bit. If there's a state of emergency, the moderator can just postpone until a date that's within 30 days after the state of emergency ends. If at June 2nd, there's state of emergency has been lifted, the moderator would have to open the meeting and continue it to a later date within 30 days. So,
Even if you do it, everybody's going to want a social distance. How do you do that?
yeah, I mean, there's some legislation that's been passed regarding the ability to do remote town meeting, like Zoom, like this. But the issue is you've got to do a roll call vote for every article, and the quorum is 152. So that's if you get the minimum quorum, it's 152 roll calls for 22 articles.
you'll be there all day and night.
And night.
We've had some discussions about different venues, maybe outside. I don't know how feasible that is. So we're trying to go over a lot of things and seeing, what other towns are doing, if they're doing anything that might be useful as well. Because a lot of towns have their town meetings earlier than ours, so we have the benefit of seeing if they do anything innovative.
What happens if you don't get a quorum? What does the moderator do then?
Yeah, we'll get back to that, Jeff, because that's a routine. They can't hold the meeting. They can't take a vote.
Right, but they find another date, right?
Right.
Well, yeah. So second paragraph, the general fund budget. So
Wait a second, we have to, the way that sentence needs to finish though, as presented in Article 8 and Article 17 of the annual town meeting warrant.
Yes, that's right.
Perfect.
Now here we go.
Say for
Nice job,
June
guys. We're through one
2nd.
sentence.
Here
Second,
we go with specifics again.
there you go.
One sentence.
I'm concerned about time management right now because it's a little after 7 and we're on the second paragraph. One of the purposes that we did having people get back to us before the meeting was that things were able to really move along. So my concern here, again, we're doing specifics. We don't know if that 2.8 and 1.7 is correct.
Yeah, kill it. The 1.7 should be correct.
All right, let's just leave that for a minute, Greg, and let's go on and further in the letter and see if we've got the main points down. We have to talk about Schedule A, which is pretty involved.
Is that generic enough there?
What do you think?
Looks good.
Good.
All in favor?
Did these percentages make sense to you, Greg? The 91?
How about
You want them, instead of the 91, say the Schedule A budget.
Yeah,
The
that's what
Schedule
I
A,
was just
yeah,
going to
yeah.
suggest. We're on the same page there.
Yeah.
The Schedule A operating. Okay, there you go.
That makes sense.
Okay.
Greg, is there a reason that says 13.0 and not just 13?
No, it doesn't say that now.
I love.
We're down to the 5th paragraph. That was quick work.
Phew.
I have an observation. If you're leaving all the numbers out, why are you putting 13 million in the enterprise? I mean, you're just endorsing what's already in.
That's fixed.
That's fixed.
I know, but it's
good information for people.
Because
the enterprise budgets are distributed. It's just like the previous paragraph.
Well, the one thing is the enterprise funds are all voted individually and they don't add up anywhere. So this would actually be this is additive, which is of some value to at least some people.
Actually, in the Schedule A, we show a sheet which just added up. So it is.
Oh, it does?
It is presented elsewhere.
I haven't seen it. Oh, well, never mind.
Well, take it out. You're taking the numbers out and you're just endorsing. I'm with Jeff. You get too down in the weeds in this.
Right. I mean, I think the point Brian's making, if you looked at the sample that was sent for Tuesday night of the FY20 Schedule A, there's there's an estimated annual revenue recap. There's a budget summary on the 2nd page. And then it gets into details in the last couple of pages. So the information is there.
I don't think there's any need to recount any of this stuff. It's just us as the committee endorsing the budget with a few caveats.
So we could take those 2 paragraphs out, Schedule A and the enterprise budgets.
Good, but I mean, you could leave them in too. I mean, as long as you don't keep doing numbers.
Yeah, I don't actually give that information elsewhere. So percentage breakout. So that would be new information to them.
No, what do
That
you
would
think?
be good.
I have to tell you, as a town meeting member for, I don't know, 18 years, whatever, I've never seen it set up this way. So I think it's good information. I mean, no one's ever presented that to me.
Well,
Bob?
as
Okay.
a new member, I've been trying to figure this all out and it's been quite valuable, for me. But I also think it might be different what we share with the select board versus what we send to the town. This is, at some point, they might be, here's what we want to tell the select board and here's what we want to tell the town meeting. It could be slightly different.
But this letter is for the town. This is the cover to the warrant. It would almost be the 1st page. So I think the audience for this is the town meeting.
So do you see this here? It says proposed fiscal year 20 budget summary. You see it adds up all the enterprise funds here.
Where, Greg? What are you looking at?
I'm sorry, it's at an angle, but you see, I'm pointing at something where my arrow is. You see here?
I don't
No.
see
You're still showing the letter, Greg.
Oh, I'm sorry, it's not showing. Okay, never mind. Sorry, 1 second here, I'm struggling. Share. Oh, stop share. I gotta stop that and do another one. Okay, here, how do you? Okay. All right, so you see, this is from last year.
Yeah.
And you see it, and I'm sorry it's at an angle. But you can see that what it does is it takes the enterprise trust funds and adds them all up. So you see it says total direct and indirect costs. That includes, that is already provided to town meeting.
That will be in the
Yeah.
Schedule A that's attached?
So,
Okay.
so you see over here, I can't, I'm trying to, I wish I could know how to turn this thing here. Let's see here. Okay, well, in any case, where my arrow is, you see down there, it adds all the other stuff up that uses tax levy money down there. So that will include the contractual agreements, and that will include the tax levy. And it will give the total monies coming from the tax levy to town meeting. So all of that information will be summarized within these sheets. And you see here's another sheet we use. And
Well,
then
it sounds like we don't need the numbers in the paragraphs, but the percentages are fine. Is that safe to say?
Good,
Is everyone-
I
I
agree.
agree. Percentages are great. Leave the numbers out.
That is great. Okay.
Great.
So this was a 13-page document that was mailed on Tuesday. You have it if you want to refer to it. And those of you who are time meeting members get it every year anyway. So you know.
Is that shared right now? Can you see that? Or no?
No.
Nope, not shared.
I'm sorry, Terry, that was when we just got another version of the,
Nope, it was
sent on Tuesday, that was included? No.
it was for Tuesday night's meeting, and it says Schedule A,
Okay, so it's a
It's,
slightly different version of Schedule A than
but
we've
it
been.
was from last year. It was the final from last year.
Thank you, got it.
Where in the world is it not showing my, oh, that's weird. Okay.
Our next paragraph talks about capital. But I thought the article already summarizes where the capital is being funded from.
Mhm.
So I'm wondering if we need to repeat that.
Greg, we don't have your letter up again.
I know, I'm having trouble finding how to get it. I have it and I can't seem to.
But that's a good point, Gloria. So perhaps we can take that paragraph out when we get back to looking at it.
1 second, let me try something else. This isn't working.
So if we take that out, we go right into the town of Dartmouth's administration continues to manage the town's resources.
Right.
Would you just want to say, we are also recommending approval of the capital budget based on recommendation of the CIP?
Yeah, that'd be good.
I don't know, it's,
I'm having trouble, I'm sorry. Oh boy. Stop share, maybe.
and I might even also say additional amounts are expected to come before the
We
town.
all ought to wait for the letter to get on the same page here.
Yeah,
before-
I agree. I'm having trouble here.
Yeah, while he's getting it on there, you know, one of the things, when I go to the town meeting, I always look for our capital requirements that we have to borrow for, because to me, that's, you know, a red flag. So when we look at the thing, it'd be interesting to see what that says.
Success,
And maybe
Greg.
stick with giving new information in this letter like we did with the first couple paragraphs.
Yeah.
So say something, okay.
It's gone again, Greg.
Is it on?
No, it was there and then it disappeared.
It's not on. Okay, 1 second. Oh no. I have to go to Zoom class, I guess.
All right, this is me sharing. Is this okay?
Great. We'll take it, Gloria.
So we were right over here. We're recommending approval of capital. This is where we left off.
So the question is, how can we write a statement about the capital improvement budget to add information rather than repeating? Is there anything that's being borrowed? Greg, I don't think there is, right?
Yes, there is. There's $1 million being borrowed for the sewer.
So
That's
so
clearly
that
laid
would-
out in the article. The article clearly lays that out, where the sources are.
But based on what Bob is saying, if that's a red flag and something that people look for, it might be helpful to put it in here.
So, excuse me a second, Greg, you can't get it up again with the, all the corrections up in black?
That's not, I'm, here, one second. Let me try to, oh boy. No one's in this building right now, right? No. I don't understand why it's not showing on my,
Are you unable to find the menu, Greg, to share?
yeah, I'm
Bob,
just having,
Okay, so now you're sharing.
Yeah.
You just need to open.
okay, well, let me try to save this. This
Finance committee
thing in
message
there.
proposed revision.
Should be, there it is, proposed revisions, yeah.
Yeah, it's even saved at 7:19. It's right there. Just click on it.
You see this?
yes.
You haven't opened it.
Document, the fourth
Yeah.
document.
Nope, you had it.
Okay,
there,
there
click-
it is.
There it is. All right.
You want me to get rid of this or show it this way?
We just
Okay.
want
With all the amended, with all the changes, like we first saw, and then disappeared.
Can you open the letter, Greg?
Yeah.
Double click on it.
There, you want it without the changes?
No,
We can't
With
see.
all the changes so far.
with all the changes so far, right?
You can't see the letter now?
No,
Nope,
No,
just a highlighted finance committee message proposed.
oops,
There you go.
almost.
Shrink that screen with all the files on it.
Oh, I see, okay. Stop
Probably open
share. And then,
There we are.
You know, for about $100, you can buy a second screen to attach to your laptop, and then everybody can look at their own.
Yeah,
if you can't see
Shrink-
that, you cannot
shrink
see
this
what I.
screen right
It's highlighted.
Gloria, can you
File.
bring yours up?
No, wait, you can see it highlighted though, right?
Yes,
Now
Yeah.
How
shrink the
can you
screen.
see it without highlight?
We see a
No.
screen, Greg. We see a screen. We don't see the letter. We see a screen.
Greg, it's open behind this. Shrink
that's-
this screen.
Open it.
Yes.
Double click.
Adam's right.
Already opened.
Then shrink the screen.
Yes.
Or let's move on and have Gloria put hers back up.
Yeah, Greg,
Okay.
you can try and email it to me, and I can put it up on my screen. On my
Yeah, all right, I'll do that. I'm struggling here, to say the least. Oh, boy.
let's try, Greg.
None of this is easy, is it?
we love technology.
I don't know what I'm doing wrong.
Thanks for trying, Greg.
I think I gotta go to Zoom class, so.
We have to take Sean with you if he can't get it up.
Yeah, I know, right?
Well, you see the insignia behind Sean there?
Yeah,
He's not actually in front of that, so he.
we know that.
We know that.
Looks like things are coming out of his ears.
They're savvy. Yeah, I know. More.
I think he has a headset on.
So
All right.
Greg, you can unshare your screen. I'm not sure how you would do that, but
Sorry, I'm having to send this to my other computer because my, all right,
So Bob, when you mentioned the amount of borrowing in capital, is that not identified in the article itself?
Yeah, I believe it is. I mean, I just,
I
you know,
think,
just,
Bob, I think you make a good point that addressing the debt structure of the town on some big picture position is a smart idea. I think the town members would like to know, where do we stand from a debt standpoint?
Yeah.
Is a smart idea. So there's certainly something we should be able to say about that to fill people in.
all right, Sean.
Let you know
It's
when
gone.
you emailed it, right? So
Yeah, I did. And I emailed Gloria too, so
So Greg, can you unshare your screen?
I will try to do that, yeah.
Yeah.
hey,
all right, I got it. Let's see here.
You're on the hot seat now, Sean.
I know, huh? All right, so let's see.
The one thing we really don't talk about much at town meeting is the balance sheet of the
Are
town.
you kidding
I
me?
agree.
Oh, I have it. I have it. I can't believe this.
Yay!
hey,
I don't understand how that happened, but
Here it is.
All right, where were we?
Okay. So the capital budget. You could say as in Article what? Whatever it was.
6. Is it 6?
6. You could say as in Article 6. Yep.
there.
I don't think you need to say the rest. Because it says, except I might say that, maybe they all know this, but I think an additional amount, a supplemental capital budget will come forward in the fall. It will probably come forward in the fall.
We want to say something about capital projects that are not being recommended. And do we want to say something about borrowing?
If the capital are
Well,
not recommended, why even mention it?
yeah, can I just point out another thing, and I don't have it readily in front of me, and I'm not going to go back because I don't want to go through that again. But you may recall that every town meeting we have a capital report.
Yep.
And that capital report will in detail outline every item that is being recommended, how it's being funded, how much is coming from borrowing, how much is coming from enterprise fund, how much is coming from free cash, surplus revenue. So all those details will be in the capital report.
So then I guess what is the main statement that we want to make to town meeting about the capital budget? Is there anything beyond what's already in there?
That last sentence should stay. The amount dedicated for capital in the fall has yet to be determined.
To Greg's point, I pulled up, I have my binder in front of me. So just in the fall, the capital planning committee had a 3-page report. So to Greg's point, it's all very much detailed.
Okay.
okay.
So do you want to take the whole paragraph out? Do you want to just leave in, say we're recommending approval and then the last sentence? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah, that's
I think
fine.
it's fine as is.
I guess what the town might want, or what the members might want to hear is not the details, because they can see that in all the other schedules, but what's our view of how we're doing in terms of capital spending? What are the reserves? What are the retained, how much do we have in, extra to spend in the retained earnings, wherever they are? I mean, if you want to make some statements, I would make them about the position that the town is in, not the details that are in the budget itself. I mean, that, as a finance committee, that's the kind of oversight comments that they might like to hear from us.
What are your thoughts about that?
I mean, I agree, but I think it's too late for us to do that.
Yeah,
This-
it might be.
I think it's
I
a
just
valid
leave-
point.
I have never done this, but I am willing to, if the board and the, Sean wants me to do this, I can put in the budget. You may recall that Terry sent you a sheet showing the retained earnings, showing the stabilization, the retained earnings and showing the surplus revenue and what was used in the, yes, I could put something like that in the article, Article 8. So I could create another page, or I could put it as part of the capital budget, the capital report,
And to make what point?
just to show people it would be part of the capital report where we would show the retained earnings, showing what it started off with, what was voted at the last town meeting, and what will occur if we vote the number at this town meeting.
In the general fund.
I don't think you need, why can't you just put, we are also recommending the approval of fiscal year 2021 capital budget based on the recommendation of the capital improvement committee as outlined in Article 6, and take the rest of it out.
Yeah, you always run a risk, because if that reconciliation you're talking about is the one that ends up showing about 200,000 of surplus after all the spending,
Yeah.
270,000 or so. So if you show that to town meeting, you're going to get questions that say, well, is 270,000 of retained earnings enough for a town with a $90 million budget? I mean,
Well,
they're going to ask questions.
that's one reason why we don't provide that directly.
I understand. That's what I'm saying. You got to be careful.
But
think that what
I'm
Brandon
willing to
was-
put it in should there be a desired, you may recall during town meeting, I typically verbally give that information. I will tell people how much money is coming from, I'll tell them how much is available in free
Okay,
cash to use. I will tell them how much is in retained
great.
earnings.
so Greg, I'm thinking what Brian just said is going to be in the warrant rationale. We're going to say words, in the warrant rationale under this article. So for the purpose of the cover letter, do we want to say anything about capital? Or do we think we're covering it in other places? Janine, what do you think about that, talking about town meeting? You think we need to put something in there, or you think we're good?
I think it's good as it stands. I don't think we need more detail.
Yeah, but as
I
it
mean,
is,
and you don't even need the sentence that begins with additional. I mean, why bother? You just agree.
You
Okay.
could give the trends, multi-year trends in capital spending over the last.
Yeah, but this is
Yeah.
our, I mean, to me, this is our statement of what we think's going on with the town budget, and where we stand going in terms of the COVID-19 thing. And
Okay,
I agree with
I mean,
Brian.
all this stuff is available somewhere else. So why go?
Because it's not at the town meeting
as it is, and we'll go on to the next.
if they go someplace else.
so scrap after starting additional, perfect, good. Okay,
All of this?
Yes.
yeah,
Okay, here it goes. Bye.
So Terry, what are we doing? Just doing these by paragraph as we go through, or is that, so we're
Yeah.
on the next paragraph?
We're on the town of Dartmouth. That's how we started.
Okay.
I anticipate hearing from you one more time before we send this out, but it's probably a good idea to try to get this done, because I think we will stop though at, well, it's 7:30, so we have to discuss Schedule A, guys. That's gonna take a while.
I know, but at the same time, we need to finish this too.
I
So
know,
I
we
don't,
do.
I-
Yep. All
maybe
right,
we have another meeting.
we might need to. All right, let's see how we do on the next paragraph.
Well, does this cover letter have a due date?
Yeah, we're gonna get it out to people. We wanted to give them a week, which means getting it out by Monday.
The cover letter has to get out.
We're gonna discuss the cover letter at the joint meeting on May 11th. And we have talked about getting this up because we've had people complain in the past about not having enough time to review and get ready for the discussion. We talked about getting this out to the school committee and the select board on Monday for their review.
The cover letter?
Correct. Yeah.
Well, Terry, I'll
Why
just-
are they all reviewing the cover letter? I'm
if
sorry,
you
why?
want, the select board obviously meets on the 11th. Their packet goes out on the 7th, so you could take till the 7th to get the letter out.
Okay. It's not for their discussion, Jeff. It's for their review to be ready to discuss with us. It's our letter. We're going to be sending a letter out. We're going
To
to be
to the town members, the meeting members, right?
Yeah.
Meeting members.
Yeah, but we're going to have a joint meeting on May 11th. And at the joint meeting, we're going to talk about the town meeting and the warrant and the rationales and the cover letter. And we have talked at our finance committee meeting about preparing people for the discussion by sending this out beforehand. Am I making that up, or do other people remember us talking about that?
I remember you talking about
It's not really for their review, though. I mean, we're not.
It's not for their
running by
review
them.
at all.
Right.
No, it's a final letter. It's our letter, but we want them to be on the same page and to understand why we're saying this. And that's why we said we were going to send this out before the meeting.
Okay.
So they would be prepared.
Got it.
Actually, Terry, technically, the agenda gets posted on the 7th, but the packet to the select board generally goes out on the 8th, Friday morning. So
Okay.
if you wanted to finalize it next Thursday, you could.
Oh, okay. Well, that's good to have a little breathing room, but I sure hope we don't have to. Let me say that. But let's go on to the Town of Dartmouth's administration. So this was changed to 2014. That's how long we've had the AAA bonding?
I looked.
Oh, great. Okay. And are people good with the rest of this paragraph? I thought this was a good paragraph.
Yeah, no,
Yep,
this is
Terry,
very,
I have no comments other than I would change the word payments at the end. So it might impact tax collection, property tax collection rate or something along that as far as. impact
Okay.
payments.
Do you see that, Greg? Yeah.
Recently
Last
agreed
word,
to-
just the last word.
Oh, town tax collections, okay.
Yep.
I'm not sure rainy day is the right terminology for a municipal government to use.
That's true.
We do actually use it, but yeah, that's,
Kind of colloquial for a.
it's better than a slush fund.
Yeah. I'll agree with that.
keep a reserve for unanticipated expenditures, or to keep a reserve for unanticipated and emergency.
Or you can just say to keep essential reserves.
Right. Right.
That should be correct.
All right, next paragraph, right?
Yep.
So we're going to take out rainy day,
Are
Greg.
we gonna take out rainy day? Okay.
Yeah.
Say snow.
Make it
And
reserves S, right? Reserves S.
Yeah, to keep
Plural.
essential reserves. Yeah, it should have a S,
Okay.
plural reserves.
It's good.
our endorsement. This is one of the changes that was made between Tuesday and tonight, and that's changing conditional to based on the facts.
Right.
So I had originally put in conditional because I felt that it was conditional because we had to see if we could get them to okay the whole idea of us meeting monthly and reviewing what needed to be done should there be budget shortfall. I mean, but I agree too. I mean, we have to endorse the budget too, as Bob said. So, I mean,
Because this,
I don't.
I think people understood that point. I think that the issue is, the point was made that the budget is the budget and it's going to be voted on that day.
Yeah.
So we
Yeah.
won't be
So
able
it's not
to
conditional.
change it.
I get
Yeah.
it.
It's
That's
going to be
fine.
what it is, and then whatever changes are made are after the fact. So
I think it's good that we're putting in that we recognize that the problems that are going to be due to the COVID-19, but we're trying to look out in anticipation and putting this budget together.
Mhm.
I wouldn't use the word facts. I would never use the word facts in something like facts is an absolute
Yeah,
term.
I agree with that too.
That's-
Yeah.
How
I would
about
put
information?
Yeah, just
Information.
Data, whatever, yeah.
Information currently available or whatever,
Yeah, information's better.
I like the rest of the paragraph.
Yeah, I'm good.
Yep.
Now, there was my question what do we have, and it's for Greg, do we have the capability of running good monthly budget to actual numbers?
Yes, we do.
Okay. Excellent.
Now, why are we, this is silly, but why are we saying for town meeting scheduled in June 2020? Why not just say the spring 2020 town meeting?
Yeah, no reason.
I've already actually put the town.
date up top, yeah.
There, so maybe I can just take it out if you want.
Yep.
Are you thinking that,
It could be July.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Do we put Springtime meeting?
For the spring town meeting.
our town meeting?
Which could be summer town meeting, right? Yeah.
You can't say the annual town meeting because as I went through this, we have actually 2 annual town meetings. That's how the charter reads. It's the weirdest thing.
Oh,
Okay.
Can we see the rest? I mean, the bottom?
Oh, sorry.
Second page.
When you say the
So the
above
last
impact
sentence
on the
is what we-
economy, you're talking about the Dartmouth economy? Was that what that was intended to be, or just the overall economy?
The overall economy.
I mean, we'll probably get questions on the impact of COVID-19 on the Dartmouth economy, or
Which I wouldn't try to answer. I think everybody could agree that there's going to be an impact on the economy. That's,
yeah.
I don't think we have to get into detail, but I do think we should take the last sentence out. We suggest reviewing the average spending, because that gets into bigger
Fine.
than,
That's,
Where
yeah.
are you? You lost it.
where it says, we suggest reviewing the last sentence of that paragraph. Take it out.
Yeah, I agree.
last sentence.
I'm involved when
Yeah, I agree too.
The
Yeah,
next,
I agree.
in red,
And then all the red can go.
can be
put
removed.
the period back.
Yes, I'm
Oh,
on the
yeah.
finance committee, and so instead of,
Everything else look okay in the paragraph?
Yes.
Except for the no period, there's no period at the end of the sentence.
Oh,
I don't know, what does it mean when you say as opposed to just varying the amount in accordance with available reserves? What does that mean?
As I've tried to explain, one thing we could do is we could in the spring, we could have a article appropriate, we could establish what's called a stabilization fund for capital.
Right.
And actually appropriate amount toward the capital stabilization fund.
And then you say as opposed to just varying the amount in accordance with available reserves. That's the part I don't get.
So what we do right now is we don't
Yeah.
set aside any money in a capital account. We just vote it from reserves.
I suggest that we
and
take
that-
that sentence out. We take that sentence out because that's the bigger discussion that we've been having about funding for capital. I don't think it's needed in there.
What we're doing now is
Right.
basically a pay-as-you-go, right?
Yeah.
We look at what
Yeah,
we
Right.
got.
based on again, what we're pay as you go and based on what we have at the
Right.
time in the reserve. So one year we might have 5 million, the next year we have 4, but
By reserves, you mean free cash?
free cash,
That- You can't say reserves if you mean free cash.
free cash.
Well, then you definitely can't say reserves because those are two different terms.
So my suggestion is to take that,
Or take it off.
Take it out because
Yeah.
it's not just, okay, there we go.
Because we're going to talk about that again. It's going to come up, but
Yeah.
it's in process.
It shouldn't go to the town. It should go to it's the kind of subject we should talk with the select board, not the town. Okay,
Right.
you're
No,
right.
I got it. And it kind of is, it's thrown, it's not, it flows better without it.
Okay.
All right, we on to during the summer?
Yep.
Fine.
Everybody good with that? It just needs, oh, there's a period there. Okay.
Yeah, it looks like, indicates we can reevaluate in the summer.
Well, you normally don't change a budget in midstream, right?
No, you don't.
Yeah.
So you don't want to imply that you're going to change the budget, and the term adhere to the budgets is probably not well worded, but
How could it be worded more specifically? Because the issue would be we might have to change. We might have to accommodate the revenues that we're lacking. How would that be written?
You could
well,
just say
what do
on
you
whether to
normally
make,
do if something happens in the middle of the year and you aren't going to have the money budgeted for? What typically happens, Greg?
It doesn't typically happen that way, but we would.
Not here.
We would cover any discrepancies at the end of the fiscal year through a line item transfer or through.
Right.
through a
So you could
want-
just
you want
say,
to plan.
you-
You want to plan for shortfalls, which somehow.
you could just say, make a recommendation to make changes based on the prevailing situation and take out on whether to adhere to the budgets.
yeah, keep
Yeah.
on whether. So it's make a recommendation on whether to make changes based on the prevailing situation.
Well, this might be a good opportunity for you to mention that you're going to continue to evaluate the spending, the non-essential spending and hiring freeze, because that's in place through the fiscal year. And this might be a good opportunity. You're kind of alluding to it here, but you might. It's up to you all if you want to add that you're evaluating that, and you will work with the board to.
That's a good suggestion. So we would say to make a recommendation on continuing the spending freeze or other changes, or how help me out.
How about instead of making recommendations, we just say that we're going to meet with the select board to assess any,
To assess.
I think I would say on recommendation on whether planning is required to anticipate shortfalls based on the prevailing situation or budget shortfalls.
Well, the reason that I like the recommendation about continuing the hiring spending freeze is that the select board makes that decision. That's their job. We advise them. When the last one was made, Sean sent that to us and asked for input on that. And I think it's something that's in place, so it would allow us to continue that same status.
Okay.
I'd like to include that.
You're going to have to refer to it as the recently implemented hiring and spending freeze because this is the first time we've mentioned it. It's kind of coming out of the blue unless you mention it like that.
There you go.
And non-essential hiring and spending.
Yeah, just the recently implemented, and then you call it whatever you call it.
And you could say, and other planning steps required to anticipate budget shortfalls.
Good.
Oh, well, that's the last sentence really says that, right? If a budget deficit is predicted, we work together with the select board to address causes and options.
Yeah, okay.
That says it. So is it redundant?
Maybe get rid of the second, they get rid of the bottom one.
We'll meet with the select board, make recommendations to hit a budget, and then the last sentence, those are redundant sentences, I think.
Yeah, just get rid of let's get rid of the bottom sentence. That causes part is kind of awkward too. You're not going to really address causes. You're going to address options for dealing. The only worst thing than typing is having 10 people watch you type while you're typing.
I'm with you.
Word.
All right, I'm going to
That's
ask you,
fine.
do you want to continue to work on this letter or do you want to switch over to Schedule A? It's like 10 of 8.
Aren't we almost done with this letter?
We have about 5 more paragraphs.
5 paragraphs, so 25, 30 minutes.
What do you think?
At least.
I don't know. I think
Let's finish it.
Can we just bang it out?
I agree. Let's get it over
Quickly.
with.
Okay,
our mind is on it.
okay.
Let's go.
How's that sound? Readdressing the budget at the fall town meeting.
I'm not sure you even need that last part, but that's just my opinion.
We can't readdress the
Yeah.
budget.
You can't.
Yeah.
Budget is set for the year. You can't readdress it at the town meeting.
I think you
Say
could,
readdress
Fall
spending.
town meeting. You can't, okay.
you could just end it after situation.
How about,
Yes.
Makes a perfectly good
All
sense.
right, that's fine.
Yeah, just leave it at that, at the situation with a period.
There we go.
Nice work.
Good job, Greg.
I have no comments on this paragraph.
There was one thing I did change. Personal property is actually part of the 70%. It's not, that is, that's considered
Thank you.
a real
That's
estate
fine.
tax.
I think that paragraph will do.
Yeah, I think that paragraph's good.
Okay,
Next one. You all agree?
down to the majority.
The only, like, this is just a great, like a style thing. Whenever I read something, if I ever see the phrase "in the like" at the end of a sentence, I would
Yeah.
Okay.
always take it out and then yell at the associate who wrote it.
Yeah, I agree.
Vote it out.
How about this? The remaining 30% of the general fund revenue includes,
Mm-hmm.
and then we get rid of.
Consists primarily of.
Because it does include other stuff like indirect enterprise monies. So.
Yeah, and you don't have to be specific about everything that it includes.
Yeah, consist primarily of is good.
And that's what, that's perfect. That's what includes means. It means, it doesn't say includes, but it's,
Yeah, consists
consists of, primarily of.
primarily. There you go.
Nice work.
All right.
All right, I like that paragraph.
I do too.
Exacerbated. That's a good Scrabble word.
I came up with that, so.
Are you okay with that?
Wait a minute, that was my word. That wasn't your word.
Can you scroll down?
Got to
a little bit?
we just got to make sources singular.
Major source of state revenue. Yep.
Or our major sources of state revenue, because more than, it's
There you go.
income taxes, sales tax.
Thank you. Good.
Okay.
Yep.
Very good. Looks good.
Great.
Moving right along.
Next paragraph. What does that mean, grants in aid from?
I just, when I wrote it, it's anything you get from the state or the federal government to supplement the local income. I don't know if there's a better
We
word.
just put grants? Does it mean the same thing if we said?
Yeah, it
to
means the
grant?
same thing to me.
yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Could I say discretionary grants, because technically above the state, I don't know if they'll
Nah.
care.
No,
Nah,
will-
nah, it's a grant.
yeah, grants.
But,
Gonna
okay.
make it or not.
Greg, who invests the fund balances in the large trusts and the retained earnings? Are the retained earnings invested for the enterprise funds?
We currently are not doing investment of the retained earnings, but we do some investment of the stabilization fund and
In equities or just in US bonds and stuff, US Treasuries?
the stabilization fund is 90% in fixed assets and 10% in equities. The
Okay,
the OPEB fund is 60% in.
that's all right. I don't need those details.
Okay.
All right, next paragraph, while fiscal year 2021.
Can I just say something?
Responsible to,
Go ahead, Gloria.
if I'm responsible, but I go through Rockland Trust. They are our advisor.
The term trusts may pose questions for town meeting members, like what trust do we have? This is the first.
Who do we trust?
Are they
There are
trusts?
numerous small trusts. They're like, I mean, they're like a
There's like 70 of them.
fund.
80 of
All I'm saying, Greg, is we've never identified that at town meeting. We never talked about trusts. You know, it's not something that we ever.
I was taking what was already in here and wrote
Right.
it, but I mean, frankly, it's not a big portion. Unfortunately for the town, that's not a big revenue source.
I scratch that sentence.
I would take it out then. Why create issues?
Well, and also they have no bearing so much really on the general fund of the town.
I was only taking what was already there and trying to.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, because there was a question as to, you know, what investment. So you were answering that. Thank you.
Okay. But our big investments are the stabilization fund and the OPEB trust. And then we have about 700-800 in trust funds. A lot of them are like scholarship funds, that kind of stuff.
Just scroll down a little bit.
Oh, sure.
Do the enterprise funds have an investment manager that covers all this stuff, or is that a town function?
We discussed this with Rockland Trust. There are investment.
I'm gonna table that conversation. Let's come back to the letter. Well, FY 2021.
Yeah.
I think it's good. I think it's sufficiently vague.
Say
It's not the
it
problem.
again, Adam?
I like it. I think it lays everything out, but it's sufficiently vague as to not get bogged down.
It makes a
No commitments.
That's what lawyers like.
Move right along.
We good?
Yep.
So the last paragraph.
Good.
There you go.
Given fiscal,
You scroll, okay.
Yep.
So this is the reason why we wanted the select board to see this letter, is so that we can talk to them about
Right.
this particular undertaking.
So they can agree with us.
and while the school committee has a separate board and they operate independently in that respect, we do need them to work with us because there's such a huge part of the budget. So we need them to weigh in on this. And they were pretty supportive on Tuesday night.
Yep.
So we're
Keeping it
good
in
with this
mind.
letter?
Yep.
I'll send this out again, obviously, and if there's edits, I'm happy to take them. It's helpful when you send them back with your edits on it. And otherwise, we'll just, we should talk before the end of the meeting about how we're gonna send this out. My thought is that I would contact the chairpersons of both committees and do a quick conversation with them before sending it out and say why we're sending it out so that they understand.
Mhm.
And then we can put it in their packets. Is that
This
okay?
does this just go to town meeting members?
This letter is addressed from the finance committee to the town meeting members. But what we thought about as an interim step was getting the select board and the school committee to understand why we're saying this and to see if there's any pushback from them or any concerns that they have about what we're recommending here.
I think it helps for the school to also see that we are going to be looking at this monthly. And if there is a downturn, that there will be some, you know, some hard choices that need to be made and it could affect
I think
them.
if you look at the town
Yeah.
charter, it's well within our purview to be reviewing any expenditures by town officials,
Yep,
regardless of school committee or whatever.
yep.
It says that we're doing what we're supposed to be doing, I think.
Question, if since this letter is going to town meeting, should we start it off as, you know, dear town meeting members and then sign, and then are we signing the bottom of it? Is this, no, I'm just talking format.
That's my suggestion, and I also think that the comment, I think Sean made a suggestion earlier that we include at the beginning somehow, and I'd be happy to write this, or if somebody else wants to, just our process, that we've been meeting since February, that we've heard presentations from almost all of the departments before things closed up, and that what our process is. We hear from department heads, we hear requests, and we consider those requests in light of what anticipated revenues are. Something that says a little bit about what our work is. If that would go at the beginning, but yes, Gloria, I would say it would be addressed to the town meeting members.
Well, thank you, everybody. I think it's a great informative letter to provide them.
You think that we should describe our process at the beginning? Does that make sense to you, or you want to leave it as it is?
I think this was interesting because we've had more participation by the whole committee than we've had in past years.
I agree.
So it's actually a slightly different process. I have to just say, I think we've relied heavily on Greg and the town, and I'm very grateful for that. So I think we have to give a little recognition to Greg and Greg and that, you know, because we haven't really had to pay that much attention to the actual presentations. It just kind of got subverted. So somehow recognizing.
I don't think, Terry, I don't think we have to spend too much on our process.
Okay.
I think we can just say, thanks, Greg, on some level. And all the cooperation we got from Sean as well.
Do you and Beppy want to, since you initiated this, thank you very much. Do you and Beppy want to take on that addition and then send it to me?
Yeah, sure.
Thank you.
I didn't say yes.
I can't, oh, sorry, I'm not speaking for her.
Neither did Brian. Okay, so we're on to Schedule A, which is Article 16? No.
But you want to look at the spreadsheet. Do you see what I put on?
We do.
Yep. Yep.
So all the article is in, all it is if you look at what's in the warrant, it just makes, it reads, 1 second here, I'm trying to do multitasking. It just says to see if the town will vote to appropriate it doesn't have it in because it hasn't been voted from various funding sources, the purposes of funding. So you refer to this document I have up here.
Oh, Greg, can you go, there you go. Can you point out the requests and what is being recommended that are where you think there's going to be some concern from the departments?
Yeah, I will do that. But first, what I want to say here is, so once you make a vote, this here will be filled in. The one I'm bolding. This actually will disappear. This one here, this column that I'm highlighting right now is what the select board votes, and this is what you vote. You see that? And that's what town will see. So this column is just a dummy column that says that stands for preliminary recommend level staffing and not funding non-discretionary expenditures. So the first one is actually the FinCom reserve itself, as you can see highlighted here. So you have a reserve fund that covers unanticipated expenditures. The financial policy that's been voted by the FinCom in the past is that it should be the equivalent of 1 at 0.5% of the overall operating revenue. When we did that calculation, it came out to about 460. However, and this is where, you know, there are some debate points, the idea consistent with the hiring freeze, spending freeze memo is not to increase discretionary funding. So the reserve fund is a form of discretionary funding, and hence the proposal here by Sean and myself is to level fund it.
Thoughts?
I agree.
Yeah, that's fine.
Fine.
Yes.
Out of curiosity, what has it been used for in the past? Typically.
Haven't.
It's used for all sorts of things. Like it could be used for if we have a discrepancy in veterans benefits, if we need more for unemployment, if we need more for Medicare.
All right, that's fine. I was just wondering. Yeah, that's fine.
It's when what happens is at town meeting votes the bottom line. So town meeting votes, I'm highlighting the select board budget, but town meeting votes this bottom line. So if there's going to be an expenditure that will lead to going over that bottom line, we will have to go before the FinCom for either a reserve fund, or in May and June, we're also able to do what's called a line item transfer. Line item transfer, however, requires both a vote of the FinCom and select board. And we tend to prefer doing line item transfers whenever possible. There is a actually pretty detailed finance committee policy regarding this. Which I'd be happy to send out if anyone needs a copy. I'm sure Terry has a copy too.
Eric, should we review this by having Greg go over just the large increases that make up the $2.8 million increase?
What's your pleasure? Would you like to do that?
It doesn't make sense if it's going to be standard pass, to pass from it.
Well, there are it's $2.8 million of increase, right? Just to make sure
Right.
we're happy with where those increases are coming from. Just look at the ones over 10,000. It looks like we'll be pretty quick.
It's 2.5 if you look at what we're.
2.5.
So what I'll do is I'll go to the yellow ones. I'll also cite budgets that go way up. So the next one is quickly, the town clerk asks for 38. We're saying that we think 36,350 represents level funding. I should note, I'm trying to do two things here. Going back to collector. Where is it?
I don't know where you are. Oh, there.
Here's the
I'm
collector.
getting dizzy.
So
I'm getting dizzy.
one thing you'll notice with the collector, you'll see it says 75,500 and it goes up to 107. And we're not recommending level funding here. And the reason is we consider this to be non-discretionary. What this is funding is billing services and postage to go to quarterly billing for water. This has been planned out for a long time, but arguably if we're going to be in a very difficult financial time, by going to quarterly, it will help out the residents. Much as we extended the deadline on taxes by June 1, if we're able to go to the quarterly, that will help during the bad financial times. But I want to stress the reason for going to quarterly preceded the crisis. So if we were to take that amount out, we would not have sufficient funding to go to quarterly starting in January as planned for sewer and water. currently residents are billed twice a year.
And additionally, to Greg's point, we've spent a lot of resources already on consultants to help us implement this, so we don't want to let those funds go to waste.
So going down, town clerk, again, reason that went down from her request has to do with the fact that the whole discretionary versus non-discretionary. First big change, conservation. They had, you may recall, they came before the board and asked for an administrative clerk.
Yeah.
Consistent with the policy, we're not recommending that. Pretty.
Greg, my question on the Conservation Commission is this going to affect, not having that person there, is this going to affect grants that have to be monitored, data collection? Is there going to be any loss to the town by not having this position?
I can answer a little bit of that, Terry. We're meeting next week to discuss the transition plan with the Mike O'Reilly's retirement coming up in the fall. So I'll have more information for you.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, not much really here. This here, just looking at the facility maintenance budget, that's where we have a little leeway in that budget. Historically, we would use that budget for stuff like at the end of the year, we might put in a new carpet in a certain location in town hall. And in next year, we would put a little carpet elsewhere in town hall and such. But this is where the monies will come from to fund the additional needed cost related to the new library and the new police station. So it comes from this budget. And again, we have a little leeway within it. So that's why we did not change the bottom line.
Okay.
Okay. Or we changed it a little for, I think, salary purposes, but did not change the expense component. And Sean's been very good about being frugal in that area. So he should be commended for his efforts in that area. Okay. Public Police Department. That's just mainly, this isn't actually including the cost of, collective bargaining, although it is including an additional amounts for the police chief and the deputies, which was previously negotiated and approved upon. But this mainly is the big thing, why there's a difference here is to do with steps. So that was already in place before the contract, but there is also an amount that will be voted as part of Article 17. Building Department, you may recall that the building director, commissioner asked for a number of items. And the first one is he has a temporary individual who we wish to make permanent, consistent with the memo put out by Sean and myself. That was not recommended for funding. And additionally, you see these other yellow lines, that brings it down to level funding. Now, part of what he wanted was more money for training. The town is extremely supportive. Obviously, we do not wish to have people not getting basic training, particularly in the building trades. You'll see later in the budget, there is a line item for training under Sean's control. And I'm sure Sean would be amenable to using some of those monies should there be additional training needs.
Greg?
Yep.
So if we go back to police for a second, under personnel services, the
Yes.
total amount personnel. So you're saying the contract negotiations are not in there. So it's a $200 plus $1,000 increase in personnel services. You saying the majority is for step increases?
I'm saying if you look at this line here, that's for step increases. Now this here, this does reflect non-union contracts that were negotiated before this budget season. So the way the budget guidelines were set, you could put in the contract if it was already, you could put it in the budget if it had been already negotiated and agreed upon. So this is why it's in the budget, because it had been negotiated and agreed upon. Also, unlike collective bargaining contracts, they can go into effect without town meeting ratification of the first year, as long as there's money in the budget. So this does reflect some increases due to the new contracts for, 2 deputies and the police chief. And you can see throughout here, it's mainly the other thing is this, and yes, this is the amount of personnel doesn't change. So this is due to steps.
Okay,
Going
thank
from
you.
the 4.8 to 5033.
Thank you.
And getting back down to building, again, that is obviously a significant difference between what's being asked and what's being supported. Again, and if you go back to the memo, there is the it should numbers be better in the fall. There is the ability to change the budget. We do not typically do that, but again, given the extraordinary times, that is a possibility. Should things be better than worst case.
Greg, do you mind if you just go back to the police one just a little bit? There is this, my eyes, this is something with in impact patrol non-scheduled overtime. So the actual in 2019 is 0, but we're budgeting 50, 50, 50. And can you explain, do you know what that is? I'm sorry to be small, but it's still, I just don't understand why we're not spending anything, but we're still budgeting a lot.
Sean, can you better explain that than I can?
Can you say that again, Pepe?
I'm just looking at that line that says impact patrol non-scheduled overtime. And we didn't spend anything, but we're still budgeting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a program that the chief runs. I can get more detail on that where, and they have the overtimes associated to that, but I can't remember it's an acronym.
Okay.
I can't remember what the acronym
But
is.
it's just an interesting line on this. So I don't need an answer now. It's just, I don't need an answer later, but it's something we might want to look into.
Find out for you.
We did spend in 2020, right?
Yeah, it was in 2020.
Yeah. it's
And no,
2019
we
is
don't
0.
know if we've spent yet. We don't know.
He has not spent anything in recent times. He did not spend anything. Actually, when we budgeted for contractual increases, we did not increase that amount given the variability in that amount. I'm looking at what he has here. He does not provide a detailed explanation of it, but it's again, it's part of some sort of program, as Sean says. We'll have to get you the answer.
It's just interesting. If he hasn't spent anything yet this year, it's another interesting element. We don't know what he spent this year. Okay, sorry, moving ahead.
Okay, we've gone past building department. Nothing really to talk about here. Obviously, the biggest number in the budget is the schools. Now, I do plan on, I asked I asked Jim to break out this number so that you'll see it like this, not this. But this is the total number, which includes the net metering, the transportation, and then the general operating. And the good news, we were very concerned for a while that the preliminary number that Jim gave was not going to be the final number, and it looks as though this is the final number. So that's really good news, because this number, more than any other, can impact the bottom line of the town's budget. OTEC,
So
they had,
on the question on the school budget, all of that rigmarole, not rigmarole, but all that noise that when all of the teachers came and they kind of protested at our meeting, if you recall, and they were holding up signs and all of that discussion about the increases in health insurance aren't going to, take away all of our salary increases. What happened with all that?
The school and the teachers union was able to come to a tentative agreement on the.
That did what?
Pardon me?
I think a raise.
That did what?
They haven't.
So without an override, obviously.
Right, and I can't talk about the settlement. I don't think it's been agreed by both parties yet. So they have a tentative aglement. So I don't know if I can discuss the details of it.
but it did include some
Okay.
changes to healthcare.
Correct.
Okay.
And that was one of their points that we're fighting for.
Yeah.
So the next item, and keep in mind this, you didn't have them come this year, but in any case, they're budgeted at what's called net minimum. The state has this Chapter 70 system set up where if we don't fund a certain minimum amount as calculated by the state, they will actually withhold our state aid. And that is not something you want to occur, because you'll have far bigger problems than maintaining net minimum. So this, as you can see, was a $253,000 increase. Obviously, that's not small money. That was a 5% increase in budget. That's been one of our major cost accelerants for the last several years. We're hoping that trend does not continue. The one issue we are concerned about is Bristol County Agricultural High School. And the reason is not this year, but next year, that number will probably go up by about 120,000 or more, because they are doing a major capital upgrade, and that does not include the yearly debt service payment for that upgrade. So that starts next year. So we'll be seeing this number go up significantly next year. The good news, however, was we had planned on it for this year, and we have one more year where we don't have to worry about it. But it appears by all accounts next year it will hit us.
Could you at some point provide us with how many of our Dartmouth Town residents go to maybe the VOTEC and the Bristol County Ag High School?
Yes.
Thank you. Not
Greg?
now. Not now.
Greg,
Yep.
as far as Bristol Aggie, do you know if that increase is evenly dispersed throughout the county, or is it based on number of pupils that attend?
Oh boy, I got like 2 years ago, they gave me a spreadsheet showing how they divided it out, and it's been so long I've forgotten. I think it was based on, it might have been students or size of the community. I'm not sure. I'd have to look. It's been a while, but I do have something they gave me a few years ago, and I probably can dig it out. And in addition to the number of students, I can get that as well.
On the VOTEC, does that go up and down based on how many students, or is it just the same every year?
Part of it is based on students. There's also an allocation formula in terms of what percentage goes to Fairhaven, New Bedford, and Dartmouth. So if we have a higher percentage, it tends to shift more toward us and so on. But yes, the big determinant is number of students.
Okay, it's 8:23.
Okay, so very quickly here, this was additional funding. I believe a lot of this was geared toward cutting of trees and such. I talked to David Hickox, and he felt he could, even though he would prefer that we fund the full amount, the bottom line is what dictates here. And he felt that hopefully there'd be enough in the bottom line to do what he needed to be done. And obviously, if we have another great winter of snow and ice removal, that will give us a lot of flexibility there. So that's level funded. The next one, Board of Health. The main reason for this increase here was for some software that some discussions are occurring as to what kind of software package. But the bigger issue is if anything is funded, it can come out of an MIS. It's meant, this kind of stuff is meant to be covered in MIS. So we would cover any additional software package, which is not related to COVID-19, by the way, in MIS.
Greg, and Board of Health with the add-on of the nurse during COVID-19, either nurse or nurses, is that identified in this budget?
No, we did not. That is, we've created a special revenue account where we're charging everything to that. And Sean actually can tell you about something we'll probably be bringing to the next meeting about getting the ability to deficit spend in that account. It needs the position of the select board, and he suggested that we bring it to the FinCom. So right now that's being charged against a special revenue account, and we're hoping we're hoping to get aid to cover that, and if not, we would then do journal entries against the budget.
You want to add anything to that, Sean?
No, I mean, it's the request letter from DOR is a more of a formality to request that they allow us to deficit spend and to give them an estimated amount. I think Greg and Donna had come up with $100,000 as a very rough estimate, more just a not to exceed to go over. So the board is going to review that request on Monday, and then we were going to ask to put it on your agenda for the next meeting, which would be what was going to be Tuesday, but Thursday.
Okay.
If there's a tremendous amount of oversight and monitoring that's needed for the rest of the year and even into next year over restaurants and bars and all of that in reopening the economy, where does all that cost to the town fall?
Well, I mean, right now, I just had a webinar earlier today with FEMA and MEMA about reimbursement for a lot of these expenses.
Yeah.
So while this emergency, the declaration of state of emergency on a federal level is in place, then we are able to document those funds and get reimbursement for them. It could take a couple of years, but we would get reimbursement for those.
But what about
now moving forward? That's a big discussion. So we actually had a phone call today about COVID, about what do we do, if even if they made masks mandatory or restaurants to have certain stipulations,
right? How
do we do that enforcement? It's very difficult. We certainly don't have the staff or resources to do that. I don't know. And so that's still up for discussion. I don't know how any town could do it, to be honest with you, with what they're kind of proposing, that we've kind of heard whispers about, but I don't really see how that could happen.
Okay. Thank you.
The next budget, where there were a number of requests for additional expenditures, you may recall Council on Aging wanted more, and I'll click it here, wanted more for a new staff person, full-time staff person. They wanted to fund 2 new part-timers plus they added some other expenditures in their expense item. None of that was funded consistent with the financial policy. You know, it is our hope we can work with the COA on addressing their needs in a way that is consistent with the overall approach we're taking at this time. But in any case, none of the increases are being supported at this time.
Any questions about that from anybody?
I'd like to talk about the youth advocate.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I listened to the select board meeting when they made a presentation about the youth commission, and how long have we gone without a youth commission person?
The last youth commissioner left November, I think November of the previous year. So about a year and a half.
Year and a half. And the reason and they have like a board, and the board, their meetings, they wouldn't even have quorums. And so, today in the schools, we have psychologists, we have a lot of specialist counselors, and when my daughter went to Dartmouth High School, they had a youth commissioner, and he was very good, and he knew all the students. Today, if we hired somebody, nobody would know who this person is. And I think the schools adequately cover what something like this would do. So, I mean, I think it's kind of an overreach. And one of the arguments they made, well, suppose something happens at night. Well, it's a union position, and I just think between all the services that are available from the state for you, and all the everything that's available at the schools where they actually know the kids, I just think that this is a kind of a dinosaur that it's seen its better day, and I think it should be cut. That's my opinion.
Go ahead, Gloria.
So I too watched that meeting. It appeared though that the select board wholeheartedly supported working with the commission. So Sean, can you give us an update as to where they are with that? Because they were going to be working with you on that as well.
Right. So at that meeting, the select board voted that they wanted to maintain the position, and they selected that Selectman Tattlebaum work with the chair of the youth commission and myself to review the position and present with the position back to the board, because there was the youth commission wanted to expand upon the position to make it more of a health and human services director position, not a youth advocate position. So there was some crafting of that new job description, which the last meeting we had, I had crafted the job description per what the youth commission had recommended. They had their job description and criteria, but I crafted the job description in more of a municipal format, so it was more consistent with all of our job position descriptions. We reviewed that. Mr. Talbot wasn't in that meeting, so he was going to coordinate with the chair of the youth commission. But since then, I think it's kind of just fallen by the wayside with all that's been going on. So I can certainly follow up with Mr. Tattlebaum and the chair of the youth commission to see where they're at.
Was there any indication of how many years they've gone without a youth commissioner? Because
that was just answered, Lou. That was just answered. It's been a year and a half. Yep.
Right now, because of the hiring freeze, both the finance committee and the select board signed off on that, and one position included in that would be the youth commissioner, so youth advocate. So right at this point, the filling of this position unless a different interpretation would be made as to it being deemed essential under the policy, there's no attempt to hire.
Okay, Janine?
Well, given that there is a hiring freeze, why is it in the budget?
Because there hasn't been a decision made between the select board, with the select board as to what to do with the position.
We have a number of things in the budget where we have budgeted for them, but we're not trying to fill them. So for example, in the collector's office, they
Greg,
have,
I'm just gonna move us along because I know that we did talk about that position too, and I'd like to get through the rest of Schedule A if that's okay. Okay.
okay, going down, nothing really to report there. Library is at what's called Mars funding. That's why it goes, it's a state minimum we're supposed to have, and that's what it's at. Park Commission, the reason this is in green here, it should be in yellow, but it's in green, is because they had asked for a truck driver position, and again, consistent with the policy of not funding non-essential positions, that was not recommended.
But there's a concern about this, right? This is going to be discussed on Monday? Or is this something else? Isn't there a concern about upcoming
that's
programs?
something else. That's just
Oh,
a maintenance memo.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so that kind of concludes that. Debt service, the one thing I think it is very important to note this under debt service.
Going down.
What?
Going down.
Well, it's going down in terms of excluded, where are we looking at? Yeah, it's going down in terms of excluded debt. And it also is going down in terms of non-excluded debt. But in terms of non-excluded debt, we have not borrowed long-term. We were going to borrow long-term in May, and borrowing long-term costs more because when you're doing short-term, you're only paying the interest. When you go long-term, you're typically not only paying a higher interest rate because you're locking it in over a number of years, but you're also paying down principal. We were planning on going long-term in May. However, the markets have frozen up. So our financial advisor's strong recommendation is only to go short-term. So we are not going to go do long-term as we planned. They're also saying you don't want to get a bond rating right now because the bond rating agencies have actually come out with proclamations that all municipalities in the whole country have a negative rating because of the uncertainty of the.
Greg, can you just explain the difference between excluded and non-excluded? Otherwise, I'm fine with this.
Yeah, excluded debt is debt above, that is debt where we voted and over a debt exclusion. It's monies that were appropriated above and beyond what is allowed by Proposition 2.5. So within this amount here covers mainly there's a few things, but the big things are the high school still in there. And the other one that was added more recently is the police station. So as we pay that down, that goes away. If the debt service this year is 400,000, we're able to raise 400,000 more. But if the debt service next year is 300,000, we can only raise 300 more. And when I say raise, on the taxes, so you can only raise what you actually are paying for when you do a debt exclusion.
Got it.
But the item that I really wanted to focus on is this one down here. This number is, if you take out this number here, you take out this number here, I can do this since you're seeing it. And if you take out this number here, and you take out this number here, you will see that it is now level.
Got it.
So we are using this as a placeholder. Again, right now, the majority of this is not slated to be used, but once I go long-term, I want to make sure it's still built into the budget. So our financial policy is to maintain a level amount of debt, but this number right now, and keep in mind, I need to do something in May with the short term, and there may be some pay downs. I want to make that very clear. But this number right here may be our largest source of free cash in next year's budget. Because if we don't go long term, when you go long term, you don't know it until about a year later. And moreover, when you do short term, it's discretionary as to whether to do pay downs of principal. This is a number we can, based on what we do, could result in a lot of fiscal flexibility. I know you raise your eyebrows on my favorite saying, but that gives us more fiscal flexibility than any other item in the budget. Okay.
I'm sorry to say this, but not for now, but at some point in the future, it'd be fun, it'd be of value to see our total debt outstanding, what the current debt payment is, what the flex is in all of this. And what's short term, what's long term, blah, 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 blah. But that would be very helpful to hear it, see
If you want to see a debt service chart, I can certainly provide you.
Great, thank you. Not now. Thank you.
So Terry, are we voting on this budget tonight?
Well, we could do that. We
We're
could
getting
do
close.
if people feel ready to. We could.
Very close. We're getting very close. The biggest single, other than the school, the pensions, that's an assessment. We have no discretion in that a number, and we're supposed to fully fund our pension system by 2028. This is what Bristol has set it up to do. The state allows you to fully fund by 2040. It used to be, they changed the law during the last financial crisis to give us 10 more years. But roughly about 60% of what we pay is paying for people for the future, what we should be doing, but the other 40% represents unfunded liability. So if in the past, our system and the other I think there are about 103 systems in the state, had kept up with what they should be truly setting aside, this number right now would be about 40% less than it is now.
Yeah,
but we're
good for us.
Covered liability, and I think that, I don't have that in front of me, but I think it's like something like $38 million for us. Okay. And I will spare you all the other stuff here, but healthcare, this funds the healthcare went up by 3.1% in terms of premium increase this year. So this will fund that, and you'll see it doesn't show that over on the side there because of the fact we are absorbing some of that. Additionally, this amount here provides enough to fund 54% contribution by the town toward health insurance. That might give you a hint of what might have occurred in some of the negotiations. So it's enough to budget for 54 versus the current 52. It also provides for 500 toward HSA, an HSA fund for an individual, and 1,000 for a family for high deductible. We offer a high deductible plan. We believe that in the long term is the best option for the town, and we're trying to encourage our employees to migrate into that plan. And we're hoping that the schools will join in that plan. And as more employees migrate, we're hoping in the long term that will help our claims experience, which is the #1 determinant for the cost of our health insurance. 40% of the cost of health insurance is due to retiree benefits. They too get paid currently 52.48. Of the retirees, we have roughly 70 retirees on non-medics plans, of which the town pays 52%, and we have 500 and something like 540 or so medics retirees, of which the town pays 54%. Because of that, we have what's called an OPEB liability, of other post-employment benefit liability. That's estimated, last estimate, $53 million. The money up here you see is going toward the fund. And we have, of course, with the investments going, the market, it's going up and down, but we have about $3 million, over $3 million set aside in our OPEB fund for the $53 million we need.
Okay, that's enough of that. Let's keep going.
All right. Medicare payroll tax, the more we have a higher payroll, the more we need. I've always been chasing this number in the past, so I was trying to give it a little more so I don't have to go before you for a reserve fund transfer. Police medical disability, that's been pretty good in terms of numbers. Here we mentioned Sean has some leeway in this monies as to, even though this says tuition reimbursement, we can use some of this for training because it's bottom line. And then we have property and liability, which we level funded. The numbers were pretty good in terms of the increase. Now, one thing I didn't bring up, which I should have, under veterans benefits, you'll see it goes from 441 to 550. That is statutorily required. The town gets 75% reimbursement from the state. However, we have to put all upfront monies, and so we won't be getting that reimbursement until next year. Why has it gone up so much? First of all, this number here you see for 20, we're going to be asking for a reserve fund. So there will be a significant reserve fund for this number. This is not enough for the year. There are all sorts of cost of living increases. The state will add stuff. They added like, I think they went like for funeral benefits, went from 2,000 to 5,000. The whole thing's dependent on the number of clients who sign up. Well, the general trend is less because most of the people qualify for these benefits tend to be older. Again, you get veterans who move into in the town. Like when we set up that veterans housing, it went up significantly because all of a sudden we had people applying for these benefits. So that's non-discretionary. All right, that concludes the budget.
Question?
So back to Gloria's question, do you want to vote this article while it's on our mind? Bob?
I have a question. Greg, how can we add a new police station and a new library and not have property and liability insurance go up?
It's a good question.
Getting rid of the other building.
Well, I don't have that, and maybe Sean's able to better answer that than myself, but this number here, there was excess in this number. So this is a budgeted number. The actual amount of the property liability insurance, I believe, is it 800 or something? Sean, do you know? Is it 7, 8, somewhere around there?
Yeah, it's right around there. And last year, we used the same agent, which is Sylvia Insurance, but last year we saved $50,000 going from Travelers to Trident.
Okay.
So we have that savings, but it did go up because of the new police station and the library.
Okay, thank you.
But keep in mind, the new police station and the library have state-of-the-art when it comes to fire control, electric, plumbing, and all. So that I would believe would be something would be factored in when they're looking at the potential property risk to the insurer. We also, I should state in this, we have an item called claims and deductibles. So not everything that we incur gets covered by the insurance. So whenever we have one of those, we have to take it out of this amount here. And again, it's you just see expense, but one light item is called claims and deductibles.
Greg, you included in a previous document that you sent us your projections through 2022 or something. You included a line below all these expenses that was called healthcare plan enhancements for 2021.
Yeah.
Are we assuming that there will be no healthcare plan enhancements?
Those numbers are in this number that I just highlighted. They're in the health number here. And those health plan enhancements I just had described, where we went from 52 to, we budgeted enough to go from 52 to 54 and enough to provide for 500,000 HSA contribution for high deductible plans. So that's what was.
So it didn't cost as much as we thought it might. You had in your projections about 700,000, but it didn't turn out to be that expensive. Or we just aren't doing as many enhancements?
Well, I did make an adjustment based on some conversations I had with Sean and Jim based on how we treated how it was budgeted for the retirees. So I factored I changed that assumption, and that did decrease that overall enhancement number by, I think, a few $100,000.
If nothing else, it's a good thing to say. If we are actually enhancing our healthcare coverage, it's a plus that we aren't mentioning in any cover letter or anything.
Well, I should state, I have to be careful on this, but some of that still has to be negotiated.
Yeah, I would think so.
There have been some negotiations that have concluded, but we have about 11 unions in town. So. Right. Including 7 on the school side and 4 on the town. So
that number assumes that we actually are enhancing them in the negotiations. It could be less, in other words.
It assumes that
I'm going to interrupt the conversation about healthcare benefits, and we're going to move on. Would somebody like to move this article? Do we feel ready to do this, or do you think we need to discuss some more?
So moved.
So moved. Second? Second, Lou. So that's Becky and Lou. Any more questions or discussion on Article 8?
Well, let me, I don't want the youth, I would vote against it because I'm in agreement with everything except for the youth advocate. So how do I vote?
Right, and that is a good question because, and I don't know the answer to that. Greg, do you, or Sean, do you know the answer to that? If there is something in here that we don't recommend, what do you think?
You can vote a number without the youth advocate in it. So you could vote to just take out the amount for the youth advocate and vote that amount. And then,
so I guess then the question is, based on everything that Greg just reviewed, and he didn't review every high expenditures Jeff requested, but I think he covered where the sources of conflict might be. Based on everything else, and including the youth advocate, are there any recommendations for omission, or what do you think?
I recommend we not do the youth advocate.
How do people feel about that, the youth advocate?
I agree with Bob, actually, because of the fact that they've done without it for so long. And I also listened to that select board conversation about it.
Others?
I agree.
I agree with Bob.
Anybody disagree? Gloria?
Well, my only concern is that something that's currently in the works. It's something that's still being discussed. It's, it seems like the select board was in agreement and moving forward. It's just COVID-19 kind of put everything on a halt right now.
Big issue has been finding someone who could fulfill the job requirements.
I think there were differences of opinion among the finance committee even before the pandemic. So it does raise a good question in terms of aspects of Schedule A. We haven't before taken a vote on every section of Schedule A, right? We voted it in its entirety.
Well, one thing you used to do, we'd go along, and if someone had an issue, it just like town meeting, you would say hold.
Fine item.
And then you would vote on the hold.
Okay.
And then you would
I
then
haven't
vote.
done that. I don't recall ever doing that. Must have been a
I thought-
while ago.
Yeah, we've done it.
We've done it in town meeting.
I mean, here.
I thought, I thought, like, didn't we do that last year, Terry?
I couldn't tell you. I couldn't remember, but
That's
I think it would still be useful for us to come up with a way to do it, because I think there should be a system to this. And I guess that's why I asked, of all of the recommendations that were made, and so you could see as Greg went through it, what the department requested, what Greg and Sean are recommending. Are we in agreement with everything else except for the Youth Commission?
Yes, I am.
Yeah, yes.
Yes.
I'm
And
fine.
so then I guess with that one thing, if there's a majority of the committee that is not in support of the Youth Commission, we could propose that that be excluded and explain that in our rationale. I think, does that make sense to people? If that's the only area? So then I guess you want to take a vote on how many people support the recommendation to include the Youth Commission.
Can I just make another suggestion for as an option? In our cover letter, first of all, at this point, we were assuming that any new positions and open positions will be filled starting whatever, July 1.
Whenever the freeze is
No.
lifted, if the budget-
Right, what Adam's saying, whatever the hiring freeze is lifted, that could be, we don't know when that could be.
Whenever it's lifted. Okay. But the budget is currently assuming July 1.
The budget's assuming that at some point those positions will be filled because it will be lifted.
No,
in
the
next
budget's
year.
assuming they're all filled as of July 1.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think it could be in the cover letter. All new or some continuing positions, we could actually, decide to extend that, and including any new position. It's just another way of approaching this, and decide not to fill a new position and / not to fill any open positions. Those are
I think that's I get why you're saying that, but I think that's a different decision than what we're making, because I think,
agree.
and that's why I'm going back to before the pandemic, we were discussing this, and some people on the finance committee thought it was a good idea to support it. Other people thought
I have
not.
no opinion.
So,
No opinion.
yeah,
So-
but I think
someone-
I think it would make sense for us to make the decision of whether we support this position and take a vote on it, and maybe include that in the rationale.
Terry, can someone, or what would happen if I were to move to accept this budget without the Youth Commission? Would it be voted on then if someone seconded it?
It would be, and then we'd just be one body saying that we recommend Schedule A without the Youth Commission, and then the Select Board would make their decision, and then town meeting would make their decision.
So
All right,
what
well, I will move
here
that then.
is I would put in here for you, I'd put 0 and 0. And it's possible, depending on based on what the select board said before, they might be there and there. So there would be a difference. I don't know why it did that, but there'd be a difference between what the select board did and the, and so that's how town meeting would see it.
Yeah, I just want to point out that, the select board is elected, but we're appointed. And I think, I'm not doing it for that reason, but I think it's good that, there's something there that we take a position on. Because like I said, we are appointed.
Not only that, but the select board clearly relies on the finance committee's review of all of this information and takes pretty seriously what we say. So I think that's why it is important, I think, for everybody in the finance committee to think about how they feel about this position in general. Because we either recommend it without it, or we recommend with it in it, and the hiring freeze continues and it's not filled. But I don't think that's where we were before.
I'd just like to make a comment. I've been on the select board the finance committee for a long time. And we only had that position filled one time, and the person quit in 3 months because the job, they're not just in school, they're following the kids after school, they're working with the families, doing everything. And it's, we've had trouble getting anybody in there that would stay.
Gloria?
So I guess where I need some clarification is what's different about the youth advocate versus other positions that were requested is that the youth advocate figure has been sitting there. Last year it got approved. This year it's still sitting in there. They just never filled it, right? Whereas people have come forward this year and have requested new positions, which are not included in the budget because, they've been level staffed, right? So this is a little bit different.
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah.
So, to me, I just don't know where to go with it because it is so different.
Yeah.
I don't feel justified personally after listening to the different conversations, aside from the fact that it's been, empty for quite a while.
Can I make a motion to accept the budget without the youth commission, and then if somebody seconds it, we could vote on it?
I'll second it.
Second.
Adam seconded it. Okay. Any other questions? Okay, all in favor of voting this budget without the youth commission?
Yes.
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 Do a roll
Yes.
call.
Abstain?
I don't have access to my thumb button.
That's okay, your thumbs up. Any abstentions or anybody against the idea?
I can't access my darn thing.
Are you a thumbs up, Gloria, or are you a abstain? I can't tell.
Here we go.
On.
Okay. And this is very unusual, I agree, because it makes you think about the other departments and could we do the same thing with another department? But I think this is unusual because there's been some difference of opinion on whether this is needed.
So what is the vote there, Terry?
Vote is 9-0. 9-0 in
9-0.
support of this.
I think some of the soft issues here is that the high school itself has many counselors who are getting paid very good money.
Yeah.
And the youth person would be somebody who is outside school, after school. And that,
So it is 9 o'clock. Should we make
9:01.
a decision about whether we need to request another meeting? I don't even know if there is a slot open at this point, but if there is, do you want me to try to get it? It would probably be May 6th, which would be Wednesday, if it's still available. What do you think? Yeah?
Yeah.
All right, I'll ask and see if we can schedule it, because we do have a lot more to do. We haven't talked about capital, and we have the remaining articles. Number 3 on the special town meeting was withdrawn, so there are just 2 on the special town meeting to cover. Anything else that you have questions on, or anything that's been hanging?
Remind me, did we actually vote on the
Say that
special
again.
number 1?
No, you did not.
Yeah, I
Okay.
thought we did vote it when we voted the CPC. No? When we did the CPC in the regular meeting, I thought we went to that and voted. It was historical.
You did not vote the one regarding the waterways.
Right, but we voted the CPC article, right? Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, we did? Okay.
I did, and we can take it up next meeting, but I did talk to Steve Mello on that Article 2 about the, about the marina. So I'm prepared to talk about that next meeting.
Great. Okay, great. Anything else that people have? This was a hard meeting for me. I appreciate you guys hanging in there and helping. supporting Greg. I agree that Greg has been working his tail off here. It's just hard getting all this. I think we're doing a great job with this cover letter, and I think it will be very helpful in the end. So I'll see if we have Wednesday available. I'll let you know that. I'm going to do a stab at that paragraph, and anybody else who wants to add to the letter, feel free. I'll send it to you beforehand. You're welcome to chime in on the warrant. If there's any rationale language that you want to add, go for it. Thank you very much. Good night. See you
Motion.
next week.
Gonna make a
Good
motion.
night.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Do we have a motion to adjourn?
Oh, cheapers, how about that, huh? That'd be
So
good.
move.
Thank you, Lou. Adam seconded. Okay, everybody. Good night.